Can you hear me?
It's preparing. We got a good number of folks in the waiting room here. I'm expecting this to show up. I'm
Nithin, can you
pretty
hear
good
me?
about what's coming up on our YouTube page here at the Hoosier Sound. Oh, and we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are rocking and rolling on this episode of the Hoosier Sound. Indiana gets their NCAA tournament selection announced, and the Hoosiers will take on the Kent State Golden Flashes out of the MAC. The Hoosiers will play Friday night at 9:55 p.m. Eastern on TBS. And let's face it, you're going to hear this podcast, and Matt and I are going to basically tell you that Kent State is going to be like the United States Olympic Dream Team or the Harlem Globetrotters. That may not be comfortable for you. Obviously, Kent State is not as great as those teams, but the truth of the matter is IU is in for a very, very, very tough matchup.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough matchup. And the fact is you're going to hear a whole lot about Kent State and how they can score and how they can defend. And we are going to dive into this matchup and so much more here on episode 289 of the Hoosiers Sound. We're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosiers Sound on Sunday, March 12th, 2023, where I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, this is a good day for Indiana basketball. There may be a little bit of a technical issue here that we can hopefully power through. But Matt, this is a good day for IU basketball. And look, IU Kent State, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great one. Can you hear me, by the way? No, you can't hear me. Okay, great. Because I'm talking and you can hear me. Oh, okay, awesome. All right, hold up.
Ooh, we may have lost Matt here. Hold on, folks. A little bit of a technical issue. You know, you think March Madness is going to cooperate. You think everything's going to go smoothly. But as we've seen once or twice with Indiana, slow starts are not anything strange for this basketball program, for this basketball team.
No.
I'm going to bring Matt back in here onto our stream. Hopefully it goes smoothly. If it doesn't,
can you hear me now?
Have to adjust and adapt. We'll see how this goes. I still can't see him. I still can't hear him.
You can't hear me at all? What is happening?
We might still be having problems. Let's see. Hope folks bear with us. We're trying to power through some things. Hang in there as we try to manage our technical issues here. The live stream is not cooperating. Let's see what our issues are as we power through.
I love how this never works correctly.
1 second.
All right, if you guys can hear me, that's a good thing. Maybe. I don't know. It's happening. This happens every time. And I don't really understand why it does this. It's funny because we'll start the podcast and nobody will be able to hear each other. We just are just talking to each other like over video. Like mouths are moving, but nothing's actually happening. We have to restart. Technology, man. What's it good for? What is it good for? But yeah, if you can hear me, I am very excited. I use the tournament, of course. First time, not in a play-in a couple years, which is nice. Of course, I'll get into my gripes about this game, but I looked at the tip time, 9:55 Eastern time in Albany. Like, why? What about IU screams it needs to be a late tip? I'll get into my gripes about. You can hear me, right, Nithin?
Keep
Are
going,
you back?
Keep going.
Can you hear me? Oh no. How is this happening? Anyways, yeah, my gripes with it is 9:55 tip is awful. I think Nathan probably agrees with me, but I think Kent State as 13 seed is tough. I mean, the 12 seeds, if you look around on the bracket, the 12 seeds are really good, but I'm not gonna lie to you. Kent State for me was supposed to be a 12 seed. They are that good. They're fantastic defensive team. I think honestly, offensively, they'll be pretty easy to guard, but this game screams 55-54. It's gonna be a low scoring game. Tough defensive battle. We'll get into that in a little bit though.
I think we're good. I think we're
You
good.
can hear me finally?
I can hear you.
Oh, let's go.
You can hear me. Hakuna Matata. Thanks for bearing with that, everyone. I know in an ideal world, we were able to rock and roll from the start. Okay, bang, we're ready to go. So, Indiana, Kent State, Friday, late start, TBS, 10 p.m., 9:55 p.m. How exciting is that? Look, we're going to make Kent State sound like the dream team, right? We're going to make them sound like the Harlem Globetrotters. I've heard Bill Belichick before, especially during those dream Patriots runs when they were almost went undefeated for the whole season or kept making the Super Bowl. They would make the worst teams in the league sound like Super Bowl contenders. We're going to kind of do that with Kent State. We're going to kind of make Kent State sound like they're as good as any team Indiana has faced. The truth of the matter is IU is a 4-point favorite in this game, 4.5-point favorite in this game. And if you think, it's some hokey dope, rope-a-dope, hocus, lame Mac team that's just going to face Indiana and Albany and just be fodder for them, they're better than the Chattanooga team Indiana faced in 2016. They're better than the teams that Indiana crossed paths with in 2013 as far as the 1 seed run that NC. I think they're better than the Temple team Indiana faced in the round of 32 back in 2013. That's the kind of opponent we're talking about as far as this Kent State Golden Flashes squad is concerned. There are some IU ties here with Rob Senderoff running the Kent State program. We're going to dive into the matchup and dive into so much more here on episode 289 of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you for joining, everyone. We are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Sunday night, March 12th, 2023. I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. With me is Matt Lukens. Look, Matt, at the end of the day, Indiana went through a tough Big Ten schedule, won a game in the Big Ten tournament, dropped the Saturday game against Penn State. It's a little bit of a mixed bag as far as the Big Ten season is concerned. But the good news here, to set the scene, Indiana's gotten to March Madness, relatively healthy, and now it's go time.
Yep, it's go time. It's go time. This is, I think Trish X Davis's legacy is already set in stone.
Yeah.
But, this is just icing on the cake, cherry on top here. I think there's a lot of guys that can write themselves a new chapter at IU by just playing well in 2 games here. I think Tamar Bates is one of those guys who we saw step up a little bit in the Big Ten tournament. He's got a huge opportunity here to kind of rewrite a script of a season where not that he had subpar performances, but definitely underwhelmed expectations and was a little bit up or down. He can end with a complete and utter W. I think guys like Miller Kopp, who haven't really set that much of a legacy at IU can totally come out here and have a couple big games and end up, becoming IU folk legends and folk heroes here at IU. That's what March is about. So, Indiana is a March program. They are a March Madness program historically. We play well in the tournament. We make runs. We're pretty dominant. We have a high win percentage. Yeah. Even in the last couple years past, we have 2 Sweet 16s in the last 10 years. in a 10-year stretch where you made the tournament half those times. It would not be insane for me if we made the Sweet 16. It wouldn't be crazy for me if we made the Final Four. We're in the tournament, we're dancing, and honestly, that is about all we wanted from Coach Woodson this year, was to put us in this position. Now it's up to the players to go out and actually execute and get us to back to where the program wants to be, which is Sweet 16s and Final Fours and national championships.
Yes, folks, the bracket was released earlier here on Sunday night. Thank you for joining. We really appreciate it. Leave your comments, leave your questions in the live chat. We'll try to get to them as we can. Indiana, Kent State, Friday night, 9:55 p.m. Eastern on TBS. The winner of that game will take on the winner of Miami versus Drake on Sunday. As I look at this, Matt, before we really dive into the Kent State matchup, Indiana got a bit of a mixed bag as far as this draw. I think Kent State is a fairly difficult 13 seed to match up against. The 4.5 point spread between IU and Kent State is the smallest spread of any of the 4 versus 13 matchups. Deservedly so.
Yeah.
But then as you look ahead, this Miami team that you could face on Sunday is banged up. Indiana doesn't have exactly the most brutal set of opponents to go up against, even in the second weekend. Houston, obviously the 1 seed in the region that Indiana would face on the Sweet 16 round. If it gets to that point, they're banged up a little bit. We saw Marcus Sasser pick up a groin injury. The 2 seed in IU's region is Texas. The 3 is Xavier, a team Indiana's beaten. I think long run, this draw is manageable, but the obstacle that you're matching up against first could very well be the one that keeps Woodson up at night the most.
Yeah, Kent State, I think, to me, is the scariest game out of, honestly, the first 2
I agree.
Games.
As crazy as that sounds, I agree.
I think Indiana has a better shot against a banged up Houston team than they do against Kent State. And here's why. Kent State is a strong defensive squad.
Great defense. They held Gonzaga to 49 points earlier this year.
That's right. So Kent State has the 38th overall best defensive efficiency team in KenPom, which is ridiculous, by the way, because KenPom takes into account other teams' defensive and offensive ratings. When you're playing teams from a worse conference, that hurts you, right? They played in the MAC, so they're playing against teams that are right around the 100s to 200s and everything.
Yeah.
And that hurts the ratings. They're still 38th. This is an extremely good defensive unit. They have a good senior guard and Sincere Carey. I mean, he's 10th in percentage of minutes played. And he plays like 92% of minutes total for Kent State. He is their offense basically entirely. And again, we've seen Indiana struggle in the past where teams have one definitive, really good guard. Go back to the game we just lost in the Big Ten tournament against Booty Ball in Penn State, right? And you go Jalen Pickett, right? You can go back and you look at the game against Arizona where we were absolutely cooked by their guards, right? IU struggles against guards, and this is a game where IU desperately misses Xavier Johnson.
Jameer Young. You remember Jameer Young had a huge game in the game in College Park. Tyson Walker went crazy for Michigan State when they beat us in Bloomington. IU going up against really good guards, Matt, is something that's going to make IU fans very concerned. The
only saving grace for IU is that Kent State is not a great shooting basketball
lights
team.
Out, right?
Yeah, they are not a great shooting basketball team. They are 191st in KenPom in 3 points percentage. They're 293rd, I think, actually.
Yeah.
It's probably worse. Yeah, they're 293rd in KenPom as far as 3-point go, so you don't have to worry about anything like Penn State happening to IU.
Exactly.
And also Kent State, really, if you go look up and down their schedule, other than the Gonzaga game against Timmy, they have not faced somebody like Trace Jackson Davis all year. And even in that Gonzaga game, Timmy kind of got his numbers, even though it was low scoring.
By the way, I confused Gonzaga with Houston. They held Houston to 49. Gonzaga scored 73. Gonzaga scored 73, and Timmy went for 29 and 17.
Exactly.
Houston,
Timmy got
the
his.
Houston Cougars aren't bad. I mean, let's not,
No.
Houston
Cougars are the one seed
yeah.
that they could possibly play again.
That they held to 49 on the road.
They held to 49 points on the road in Houston. They also played my favorite for the tournament, which is Gonzaga, and still played them
down to the wire
as well. And Timmy still got his points, but again, that was still a pretty good defensive effort. That Gonzaga team scores in the 90s regularly, and they scored only 70-something points in that game. IU is going to have their best shooting game of the year, most efficient from outside. I mean, you can't be going 2 of 11 from 3 in this game. You're going to need Miller Kopp to bring his A game, Tamar Bates to bring his A game. And they're just going to out-tough you. It's going to be an uncomfortable game. It's not going to be a blowout. No game in the tournament is almost a guaranteed. None of them are almost a blowout. But, I mean, again, tough game. I know I saw a lot of people just be like, F it, kind of go win it. And I like that mentality. But this is a tough draw for IU. It genuinely is. It's a tough draw, tough first game. Then they're going to have to get past it. But, if they get past it, I like them against Drake. I like them against Miami. Whoever wins that game, I like them against Houston. And then I project forward in that bracket. Already beat Xavier. I think Texas is an interesting matchup for IU. I'm not even sure they make it out of their side of the bracket because of Penn State. I would love a third shot at Penn State because teams don't beat. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. I'd love a second shot at Penn State. I like Iowa State is very beatable for IU as well. They run some good stuff, but I think again, Trace Jackson Davis would eat that game. Yeah. I like this bracket for IU if they can just get past Kent State. So I'm sitting here, and I know we were talking about making Kent State sound like the Golden State Warriors, but I feel like I'm just starting to hype people up on a Final Four run. It's
a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? Where Kent State is this team that's won 10 out of 11. They've held non-conference opponents to very close games. Again, quality non-conference opponents. Gonzaga, Houston, Charleston is in the field. We're talking about games that came down to the very end. They've got a superstar guard named Sincere Carey. And that's exactly why we're sitting here and telling you Indiana's got to approach this game as if it's another Big Ten game on their schedule, except it's being played in Albany, New York. Right? It's another Big Ten game. That's what this Kent State matchup is. To zoom out a little bit as far as the Golden Flashes are concerned, they're 26-8 this season. 15-3 as far as the MAC is concerned. They were tied for the MAC regular season championship, so they got a share of the league title in a decent. Excuse me, they finished a game behind Toledo in the MAC. I just need to confirm they finished second in the MAC behind Toledo, but in a game where they were a pick'em against Toledo on Saturday night, they beat the Rockets by 15 points. And so this is a Kent State team that's going to pose a lot of problems for IU. Matt mentioned Sincere Carey, their star guard. He had 26 in the MAC championship game on Saturday night. He's a 6'1", fifth-year guard. He's able to hit from 2, hit from 3. He's going to play a ton against Houston. He had a tough time scoring. He actually recorded 8 steals in that game. So he's able to really affect the game on both ends of the court. I will say, though, against the Houston Cougars, Carey did shoot 2 for 22. That is not a typo as far as his game down in Houston against Kelvin Sampson's team. Against Gonzaga, a solid 10.5 rebound, 6 assist performance. So Carey is someone you're going to have to pay attention to when you're looking at this IU Kent State matchup on Saturday. Mike Woodson spoke to the media earlier today, and he had a lot of thorough, comprehensive comments on what he's expecting as far as this first matchup for Indiana, as far as what the preparation will be like. Woodson came out of the Big Ten tournament saying that he's really proud of this IU roster, right? Indiana's gone through a lot this year. They faced a tough Big Ten schedule. They had to go up against Arizona, Kansas, Xavier to figure out how they stacked up against the best teams in the country. Woodson said he's going to put his game plan together today for Kent State, right? There aren't any mutual opponents as far as legitimate college basketball teams are concerned as far as between IU and Kent State. Woodson says, look, this week until Friday night will be about resting some legs, getting everybody mentally focused. I thought that was a very poignant comment from Mike Woodson. And he leaned into learning from last year's experience, right? Remember, not only is the NCAA tournament new for a lot of IU's players, even dating back to last season, it's new for Woodson too, right? When he was in the NCAA tournament, things are very different. And nowadays, it's, you got to play late games. You got to really do all the media stuff. Yeah, everyone's going to be watching because it's all on TV and it's all being streamed, and you got to pay attention to all that sort of thing. Woodson also gave some very thoughtful comments on how Kent State could guard Trace Jackson Davis. And look, Jackson Davis is my Big Ten Player of the Year, my Big Ten Defender of the Year, even if the league doesn't want to acknowledge it. It's going to be tough, right, Matt, for Kent State to put together a game plan here for TJD. Now, you said Drew Timme got his. Do you think Kent State will double team Jackson Davis down low? Or on the other hand, do you think this is a game where TJD needs to drop 30 and leave Kent State in the rear view?
This is a game that Trace Jackson Davis needs to put on a show. Again, he's probably going to get snubbed for National Player of the Year. He's getting with Big Ten Player of the Year, but he can go out and make a case for Player of the Tournament. And NCAA tournament, he can go and do that. He can start laying the groundwork for that in game one. And again, you go and look at what he did to their bigs. They don't got a lot of bodies down there.
Timme, yeah, Drew Timme.
Yes, not you, Timme. But Timme did to their bigs. They don't got a lot of bodies down there, so you can get them in foul trouble, and then all of a sudden Trace is just eating on every single possession. But again, turnovers are going to be a big part of this game. This Kent State's a team that forces a lot of turnovers. I mean, you got to need a game of the year ball protection wise, right?
Yes.
Taking care of the ball from Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trey Galloway. They're going to have to be, careful with the ball. You're probably going to get some stupid turnovers from Tamar Bates. You're going to have to live with that, right? If he's hitting shots. You're probably going to get some stupid turnovers from Race Thompson. You're going to have to deal with that if he's defending well. But I think, again, Race and Trace are two kinds of guys in the post that teams like Kent State out of the MAC do not see every day. And in fact, if you go back and you look through the games that Kent State has lost recently, they lost to a guy named Peyton Sparks, who Indiana fans might have to get relatively familiar with for the future of the program. But besides that point, he is a more of a physically dominant 6'9" big, and he got his in that matchup. All right. He definitely played well in that Ball State matchup against Kent State in a conference game. I don't see why Indiana can't do what Ball State did in that matchup, which was limit turnovers, hit a couple timely 3-pointers, and absolutely feed the post. But if you give Kent State transition opportunities, you're turning over the ball, bad passes, bad decisions with the ball, they can just start absolutely bullying you offensively in transition. And you just don't want to do that. You don't want to give them free points, right? And you want to make them work for it in the half court. They're not a great offensive team. They're like 120th nationally offensively, which is mid at best. But if they get out in transition, they start to become closer to the 30s, 40s range nationally. And they'll kill you that way. So limit turnovers, feed Trace. It's a pretty easy to say game plan, but it's going to be hard to execute, especially when those guards are going to be older and physical, and they're winners. They just won their conference tournament. They had to win their conference tournament to book a trip to March. They're winners, man. So this game is going to, if it gets down to the wire, you got to make your free throws. Please, I beg. Race Thompson.
Yeah,
but
right.
This is a team that's just not going to say, is going to never say die, right? And so I use the same way too. You saw the way they came back against Penn State. You've seen it in the Northwestern game at home, right? This game is going to come down to the wire, and you guys are going to be extremely uncomfortable watching it with us.
Yeah, you were talking about Kent State's penchant to force turnovers. Houston at 23. Yeah. Houston, a 1 seed.
Houston, a 1 seed who has great guards.
Great 23 at home against the Kent State Golden Flashes defense. And that was a game where Tremont Mark was available and Marcus Sasser was available. That's exactly the kind of frustration this Kent State defense can cause for an offense like IU's. Now, as Matt did mention, their front court's a little thin. Okay, if you're looking for the guys that will guard Trace Jackson Davis, will be number 42, Claron Hornbeek, as well as number 33, Myrene Thomas. A couple of guys who are 6'8", 6'9". You talked about Peyton Sparks getting a double-double when Ball State beat Kent State earlier this year. Talk about Drew Timme going off against Kent State when Gonzaga faced them earlier this season. Kent State's going to be shorthanded as far as how they guard Trace Jackson Davis. But the thing is, the Golden Flashes use the foul as a weapon on defense. And the thing is, if Trace Jackson Davis beats a guy one-on-one, they'll grab his jersey, they'll hit his wrist, they'll force Jackson Davis to make 2 free throws. And that's where, as you mentioned, Matt, TJD is going to have to make his down the stretch. Race Thompson's going to have to make his. Galloway, Hood, Schifino, when they get the opportunity, they'll have to make theirs as well. That's going to be Indiana's matchup in this game. It's going to be inside. It's going to be against the smaller, non-NBA bound bigs that Kent State has. But as I look at this, Matt, right, Kent State also rebounds the ball really well. And we looked at Indiana over the weekend, have a very tough time rebounding the basketball. For you, does IU's approach on the glass need to change? Is it a personnel thing? Do they need to try Jordan Geronimo more to seal those rebounds, more Malik Renew? What does Indiana do here in order to fix their rebounding problem? Because they have to really bring it in order to win that matchup on Friday against Kent State.
Well, I think the rebounding problem is more of a system problem because you have your best rebounder being your go-to block guy, right? Trace Jackson Davis is trying to be your rim protector and also be your rebounder. Those two things don't necessarily go together, right? Because if you're the one contesting the shot, it's hard for you to turn around and get the rebound. And so that relies on Race Thompson to be a good rebounder. That relies on Miller Kopp to be a good rebounder. It relies on Tamar Bates, so whoever's playing. And to be honest, it's more on, I think Race Thompson needs to be held more accountable as far as his rebounding efforts go. And I think Miller Kopp needs to be held accountable for his rebounding efforts. Because again, Miller Kopp, he's 6'7". And I think he might be one of IU's worst rebounders. He's just a guy, you just got to box out, you got to make sure you find your guy, hand to guy, turn around, do all the basic things they teach you in basketball. I'm going to really focus on rebounding this game because, again, they get out of transition, miss shot into transition or miss shot into second chance opportunity, it's going to absolutely kill IU.
Now let's talk more about Kopp, right? We can loop in Jalen Hood-Schifino into this conversation and Tamar Bates into this conversation, maybe Trey Galloway too. Kent State, they will allow you to take some threes. And if we try to read the future here, Rob Senderoff is probably going to have his team bring the double on Jackson Davis, and that's going to open up those three-point opportunities for Indiana on the perimeter. Toledo in the MAC championship game took 27 three-point attempts out of 59 field goal attempts. What does that mean? That's the three-point rate upwards of 40%. In other words, they're over 40% of their shots are coming from downtown. That's not how Indiana plays. We've seen this team far too often. Indiana loves the two-pointer, loves the two-pointer. Then Trace Jackson Davis spoke today, and TJD said Indiana's got to play with confidence on offense. And when the three is there, Indiana's got to take it. What is the goal here for Mike Woodson and the assistants over the next few days to make sure that Indiana takes those three-point shots when they're there? Because the shooters are hitting them at over 40%, especially Kopp and Galloway.
Just got to take it with confidence. And Trace hit the nail on the head. You watch the Big Ten tournament, you watch guys take threes. You're not stepping into them. Step into your three-pointers. Kind of put your chest out a little bit. You miss it. That's fine. But just keep taking threes and keep attempting them. I think IU wins most games when they attempt over 15 threes, right? It's not a surprise, right? They have guys that can make threes. I think, again, you go and look at Miller Kopp, you go look at Trey Galloway, you look at their percentages, they're really good. Tamar Bates has done pretty well hitting threes. You saw Race Thompson hit a timely three against Maryland. These guys can hit that shot. They just got to be given the confidence to do so. You saw Miller Kopp kind of lose confidence almost in that Penn State game. You saw him take a lot of mid-range shots and kind of get chased off the line, and that was just not what you want to see. So, like you said, they probably send a double at Trace. I'm assuming that the other guys are going to feed off of Trace's newfound assists.
It's not newfound. Come on.
Newfound, but like
he's one of the
recently.
best passers in the game. He's such a good passer of the basketball. He knows to put it in the pocket. He's able to set up players inside, outside.
It was newfound.
It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch that development in his game. And as you were saying, Matt, I mean, the confidence, to me, it's mind-numbing to hear a fifth-year senior talk about confidence. And Jackson Davis, a senior, is talking about Miller Kopp, a senior, having a tough time pulling the trigger. I mean, this is where I thought the experience would come into play. I need more. I need more just relentlessness as far as taking those threes. It's a math problem nowadays in college basketball. And this game, and I heard you say this just before I got on, this game could be a race to 60.
Yeah.
And, it's if you get to 60, you want to have 10 or 12 threes in there. That takes a big chunk out of what you have to do the rest of the way. Kopp, Galloway, Bates, Hood, Schifino, and others who may come into the game and get those looks, let it rip. Your percentages are great. Let it rip. Indiana needs to take advantage because Kent State will dare IU to shoot these. And if Indiana doesn't, they're going to make life very, very difficult for themselves.
I just feel like Miller Kopp's in his head. And when a shooter's in his head.
Why, though? I understand Tamar Bates. He's in year 2. Why is Miller Kopp getting into his head?
Because he's a shooter. Shooters do this all the time. You can't get into the mind of a shooter, okay? They'll kick you back out again. They are just interesting subjects. I do a podcast with a former shooter, and I cannot tell you what Ant's thinking ever. So, they are
so frustrating
subjects. I need a psychological study done on 3-point shooters. What I actually need, because they're like baseball pitchers, right? If they toe touches the line when they're running out to the mound, all of a sudden their ERA goes up by like 3 points, and you're like, how is this even possible? It's all in the head thing, and it doesn't matter how old he is. He could be 35 years old and playing in the NBA. You still find guys in the NBA that are going through funks and going through things. Just go look at Duncan Robinson's stats recently for the Miami Heat. He was a guy that was an all-star selection in a 3-point contest guy 2 years ago, and now he cannot hit the broadside of the barn for the Miami Heat. Very frustrating to watch as a fan. So Miller Kopp, I think it's fine, but he's got to find something. He's got to reach into the bag of his tricks from his career of being a basketball player and figure out how he got out of those funks and kind of just do whatever he needs to do that. If that's changing up the pregame meal, changing up the hype music, if it's shooting with your left hand in warm-ups or whatever it might be, if it's do something funky, right? To change it up a bit and kind of feel better about yourself. But I feel like once Miller sees one open shot go in the tournament, I feel like his confidence level will shoot through the roof, and you'll see him probably sink a couple more big 3-pointers.
I hope so, because in this game, whether it's Kopp or Bates or Galloway, Indiana, in my dream scenario, they take 23s in this game, which is rare territory for this Indiana program. But Kent State's going to double TJD, and I think TJD is going to swing it out, and Indiana's going to have to reverse the basketball, find the open 3-point shooter in the corner, out on the wings. That to me is the way I see this game playing out. And look, Tamar Bates has improved as far as his shooting form. Miller Kopp, when he takes them, he makes them. I want to see Indiana let it rip from downtown. We'll see how it all plays out on Friday night. We're not going anywhere, folks. We got so much more to talk about here on episode 289 of the Hoosier Sound. Indiana's in the NCAA tournament. They've made it on the men's and the women's side. The men have a 4 seed going to Albany. The women, they recorded a 1 seed, and they're going to host the first 2 matchups in Bloomington on Saturday and Monday. That game on Monday is going to be interesting. Indiana will face either an Oklahoma State team or a Miami team that have had their ups and downs this season, and neither team's going to be afraid to face IU in Bloomington on Monday in the women's tournament. IU beat Miami in Miami last year, but this is a different looking Hurricanes team that recently added the Cavender twins, known wildly in the TikTok influencer circles. They are part of this Miami team now that will try to knock off Oklahoma State and then get their chance against Indiana on Monday in the round of 32. Congratulations to Mike Woodson, Terry Morin, the players. It's been fun, largely, to watch IU men's and women's basketball this season. Now, all the chips are on the table here. March Madness, folks, just pay a disproportionate amount of attention to the NCAA tournament compared to the regular season. We are the Hoosier Sound. This is our 289th episode, folks, and we're going to be here from now until the end of eternity when it comes to IU sports. We're the one-stop shop. We are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're going to have tons of articles up over the course of the next few weeks as far as the NCAA tournament on the men's and women's side. Go check out our recap from IU's loss to Penn State. If you have not already, we'll have some data, lineup data coming out in the next couple of days on what combinations Mike Woodson can use going forward into the NCAA tournament. And we're going to be with the IU teams every step of the way here. We were able to send our good friend Charlie to the Big Ten tournament over the weekend so he could report firsthand what he was seeing as far as the IU men's and the women's team, as far as the IU men's team, and then also keeping track of the IU women's team. The Hoosiers will take on Kent State Friday night, close to 10 o'clock in Albany before the Turner on Sunday. Make sure you give us a follow. Make sure you like our stuff. Subscribe to our podcast, The Hoosier Sound, if you have not already. You can find our socials. You can find us on Twitter at Indiana HQ, as well as The Hoosier Sound. Matt, there's so much to digest here as far as this game is concerned. Rob Senderoff is a name that we haven't heard around IU circles in a long time. But when we did, it wasn't exactly in the greatest of graces. Senderoff was an assistant at Indiana under Kelvin Sampson back when all that happened. All right, back in 2007, Sampson and Senderoff resigned as far as an NCAA recruiting violation scandal was concerned. The NCAA gave Senderoff a 30-month show cause penalty for his role in that scandal. Then Kent State adopted him as an assistant in 2008. He coached as an assistant for 3 years, took over the program in 2011. This is a veteran basketball coach, Matt. We talk about Kent State's approach to the game. They're going to rebound the basketball. They're going to give you 3-point attempts. It's a guard-oriented offense. He's coached over almost 400 college basketball games as the head coach at Kent State. It's interesting, right? Mike Woodson is a veteran coach who's mostly focused in the NBA. Senderoff used to be at Indiana, but he's a veteran in the college game. What do you think the dynamic is going to be like there? By the way, Woodson said he never encountered Senderoff when they crossed paths when Senderoff was at IU. That's all building up to this interesting coaching match between Woodson and Senderoff on Friday night.
Yeah, it is. Again, I think Woodson probably has the upper hand here as far as pure coaching talent goes. But Senderoff is obviously no stranger to IU and no stranger to the college game. And I'm pretty sure he's taken Kent State to the tournament before.
Yes, you're right. 2017. It was a one and done round of 64 appearance. They lost to UCLA. But hey, look, the MAC is a tough conference to win. And for him to win the tournament, he did it back in 2016-17, and he's done it here in 23.
Yeah. So he's seasoned veteran, done it before. Jitters are kind of out for him as a coach, right? Whatever. It's interesting that you can end up playing the two guys that got fired from IU in 3 games. Resigned, forced out of IU in 3 games here, which would be definitely interesting. You definitely see why the committee kind of put us in the side of the bracket. It's a little bit spicy, and I kind of like that. I respect that.
Can I ask you something? So
sure.
Here's something I've paid attention to recently. Indiana, right? When they had to go to Maryland back in January, it was a 9:00 Eastern start. Indiana lost by double digits. Then on February 15th at Northwestern, it was a 9:00 Eastern start, and Indiana played like absolute crap in the first half, ended up losing that game. Mm-hmm. Then February 21st, less than a week later, 9 p.m. Eastern start at Michigan State, 15-point loss to the Spartans. Now, in Indiana's credit, Friday night was a 9:20 Eastern start against Maryland, and they took care of business. But
Mhm.
overall, the body of work here is not great when IU starts these games in the late hours. Is there anything to that? Because this game's going to start close to 10 p.m. and that makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, there is something to that. I think teams kind of they get a rhythm, right? And they're used to playing at certain times of the day and used to hanging out and getting a meal at a certain time. And you play the season, and there's only like 3 different game times for the Big Ten, really, right? It's like 12, 3 o'clock, 7. Sometimes you have a 9 o'clock game, but mostly like 7, right? And that's usually what IU had this year. You throw in the 9 o'clock plus tips, and it just throws you off. That's one thing that worries about me about this game. Now we'll talk about it if we win this game, but what worries me even more is when is our round of 6 or 32 games scheduled if we win this game? Because are we getting screwed again like we did in the Big Ten tournament, playing the last game of the Big Ten tournament on Wednesday or Thursday, and then playing the first, Friday, and playing early on Saturday, or earlier on Saturday? Does IU get the short end of the stick again as far as rest go? The good news is you do get a little bit of an extra day in between there.
Yes.
So it's less of an excuse, but still, I feel like IU continues to lose out on hours and days of rest due to poor scheduling, and it sucks. I just don't understand why in Albany, New York, you're starting a game at 9:55 Eastern time when you have, I think you have games in Sacramento, you have games in you have games in
Denver.
Colorado, you have games in a couple other places out west.
Yeah.
Like
Sacramento, even the Central Time Zone, right? Like even the Central
time.
You got games like Birmingham.
8:55 Central is still
it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't quite understand it, but then again, maybe there was something having to do with them overbooking games in Albany. I don't really know, but
now look, I guess to be fair, both teams got to play, right? Both teams got to play at that start time. Perhaps Kent State, if we go and look back, all this is very fresh to us. We go back and look, maybe Kent State struggles in these late 9 p.m. or later starts.
I don't know how many 9 p.m. MAC games there are,
and that's what I was going to say there. And look, maybe that's an advantage for Indiana, right? Maybe that's something Kent State has to deal with that Indiana has dealt with before, compared to the Golden Flashes starting these games obnoxiously late at night. It's just these student athletes, their body clocks start at 5, 6 a.m. in order for them to go through their days, and to put their biggest game of the season at 9:55 p.m. Eastern is ridiculous. It's crazy to ask the best college basketball players to go through this. And what's interesting is last year, Indiana got St. Mary's, and that game started at 7 o'clock Eastern time, which was actually 4 o'clock Pacific time. And of course, that was the time when Indiana needed as many extra hours of rest as they could get. So there's no rhyme or reason. There's no logic to any of this. At the end of the day, IU's got that 10 p.m. or so tip time on Friday. It's interesting as last year, looking at an example, Houston did get a 10 p.m. tip time out in Pittsburgh in the round of 64. And they actually did have to turn around and face Illinois at noon Eastern on the Sunday in the round of 32. Now, Houston ended up winning that game. So we'll sit here and say, all right, tip of the cap to Kelvin Sampson and his team last year. But others might say Illinois never makes it out of the round of 32. So, there's a little combination of factors going on there. Indiana will take on Kent State Friday night. That'll be on TBS. Spiro Ditas, Debbie Antonelli, and AJ Ross have the call. Indiana's a 4.5-point favorite. When we started recording this, the over-under is at 141.5 points. IU's projected to win this game 73-69, Matt. Do you expect it, before we really dig into our predictions and talk about some other aspects of Indiana's March Madness run here, do you expect this to be a game close down to the last shot, or can you see either one of these teams going up 10 and playing from ahead in that fashion?
This It's a tough question. I think this game is going to be controlled by one of these teams. Either IU is going to get ahead and stay ahead for the most part, or Kent State's going to blitz IU, and then IU is going to have to play from behind the whole game. I think the start is going to be, it's going to be in favor of one team or the other. And then I have a feeling that, like, let's say IU gets out ahead, they can't stop IU inside. They hit a couple shots, right? They're not really forcing the turnovers. They gamble on a couple things. IU gets a couple good looks. I still feel like Kent State's going to come back in the end and force some stupid turnovers, and it'll be some fluky stuff happening at the end of the game, and it'll be close, right? And I think that's basically how this game is going to go. It'll be wire-to-wire IU victory, but it's going to be uncomfortable in the end because Kent State's a winning team, and they're going to make some winning plays down the stretch to kind of get it close. Now you'll probably have to hit some clutch free throws and probably foul up 3 with like 5 seconds left to kind of secure this game.
Looking forward to it. Before we get into our predictions, Matt, we've talked about Sincere Carry quite a bit. Indiana's had a tough time guarding opposing backcourts this season. Carey is someone that's gone out and averaged 17 points a game, 5 assists per game, 4 rebounds a game. He's 6'1", 180 pounds. What do you think IU's defensive approach is going to be like here against him? Because if you do stop him, he is a bit ahead of the snake, right? If you can slow him down, the rest of your job becomes a lot easier.
My ideal, IU's not going to really do this, but they're going to go under on every screen. For him, he's a 30%, actually I think he's a 29% 3-point shooter. He doesn't really exactly scream 3-point threat. They'll go under every screen, kind of force him to hit threes. He's more of a righty, right? He finishes, I think, predominantly with his right hand. So they'll probably try to force him to go left. And hopefully everybody reads the defensive assignments, because if IU can do that, then you can definitely make him uncomfortable and force him to be more of a facilitator than a scorer. And given that he scores 18 points a game or 17 plus points per game for them, kind of getting him under his season total or season average number is going to be important for this IU team.
Yeah, the other side of it is maybe you try to slow him down one-on-one and force everyone else to put together 30, 40 points out of the Kent State team. It'll be interesting to see Mike Woodson's approach. Kent State's 3-point threat, if you ask me, their main one is Jalen Sullinger, who has hit over 40% on the season. He was so good yesterday for Kent State against Toledo. He was lining them up and swishing them through against the Rockets, a critical reason why the Golden Flash ended up winning. He hit 2 for 5 from downtown in the game. He's just making all the right decisions for Kent State against Toledo. So he's the player to watch out for, another smallish guard to pay attention to as Indiana tries to knock off Kent State. For me, I think IU is going to switch frequently out on the perimeter. I think Hood, Schifino, and Galloway will exchange that defensive assignment as the game goes on, keep Sincere Carry uncomfortable. Galloway makes more sense as a physical matchup, but Jalen Hood-Schifino is the first-round pick, right? And I'm curious if Hood-Schifino is going to go into practice this week and say, hey, coach, look, let's not overcomplicate this. Give me the assignment. And maybe Hood-Schifino takes that challenge on himself. I'm looking forward to seeing whether there's a little bit of attitude from Jalen Hood-Schifino's side, especially after a tough game against Penn State on Saturday. That's what you want to see. That's the kind of player Mike Woodson goes out there and recruits. He wants players with a little bit of attitude, a little bit of stubbornness. That's what we're going to pay attention to here as far as IU Kent State. Matt, conversation's not over, but let's get a prediction in here. Let's reward the folks who stayed with us over the course of this podcast so far. Kent State is projected to lose by 4.5 points in this game. The sports books have it by Indiana by 4.5. Ken Palm has it 73-69 in favor of Indiana. A 9:55 p.m. start time. Matt, who do you have winning this game and by how much?
All right, here's the factors. Late tip.
Yeah.
They probably watched a ton of games up until now, right? Because they're the second to last round of 64 game. You add in that IU hasn't been shooting the ball well as of late.
Oh, dear.
and you add in that Kent State's a good defensive team,
Oh dear.
it adds up to this game is going to be ugly.
Oh God.
So I've got IU winning in an absolute barnstormer, 57-55.
Oh man.
Take the under on points. You're welcome.
Oh man. I'm doing my best to get credentialed for this game on for this first weekend next week. And
are you going?
I mean, if they let me go, I'll go. If they approve me to go, I'll go. And all
I don't
I'm
think they
saying
should
is,
allow you in the building.
if all I'm saying is if it's a midnight conclusion to this game and it's going to be 57-55, man, between all the Hoosier Nation supporters out there, it's going to be, man, a real root canal type of adventure to go through.
For those that don't know, Nithin has been to the Maryland game and the Penn State game.
No, the Rutgers game, the Penn State game.
Oh, the
Rutgers.
That's probably worse. Yeah, it's probably worse. So I hope they go, oh, HQ, okay, and then go, oh, Nithin's going. Oh no.
Oh no. I'm more optimistic about this game as far as Indiana's concerned. I really like the fact that IU has 5 days of prep. Right. And I think it's going to benefit Indiana. I think this would have been, Drake could beat Miami on Friday and Indiana could face Drake on Sunday. And I think you're okay with one full day of prep for Drake.
Yep.
One full day of prep for Kent State would not be enough. These guys are running complicated actions on offense. Their defense is relentless. You really have to dig into the matchups to figure out where your advantages are. Kent State fouls and they get up into you and you got to make your free throws and they give you those 3-pointers and you got to drill them from deep. I'm not sure how much Trace Jackson Davis is going to absolutely dominate this game, but I also stepped in and listened to what Mike Woodson and Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson told the media earlier today. And I think they said all the right things. Woodson said, we're proud of what we accomplished this year, but we got a lot of basketball left. Trace and Race talked about how preparation is their biggest lesson from last year's tournament. They're happy that they have a little bit of extended time now to take a look at their 2 matchups coming up this week. I really like the comments that all 3 figures made in their post-election press conference earlier this evening. I'm going to take Indiana to win this game. I think it's going to be a little more high scoring. I also think it's going to be a cover. I think Indiana getting some extended time to prep will help IU. So I'm going to take Indiana 68-61 over Kent State. I do have this game going under still. I just think it'll be more points than what Matt suggested just a moment ago. I've got IU taking it 68-61. But if you're seeing Indiana miss their free throws and you're seeing Indiana turn the ball over, if you're seeing Indiana hesitate on those 3-point shots, we're going to have a problem on Friday night. And again, the Kent State Golden Flashes should be considered like a Big Ten team. You've got to approach this game like they are another team in your area of the country in the top 75. That's exactly who they are. They're 71st actually in the Ken Palm rating. So keep that in mind as far as Kent State comes as far as their matchup on Friday night. Should be a good game. We think Indiana will end up winning, but don't be surprised if you're sweating bullets at 11:45 or 11:50 p.m. on Friday night, because that's exactly how this one feels like it will go. We have a few more minutes of conversation here before we wrap up, but just a quick shout out of our social media channels. If you have not followed us already on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you can find us at Indiana HQ or at The Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
That's right. And join the mass as our follower count keeps growing rapidly here. We're going to cross 8,000 during March Madness. Push that number up, folks. If you follow us, spread the word. If you don't, please click that button and make sure you pay attention to what we have to say. Go scroll through the stuff we tweet out. It's, we're physically in these sites. We're in the building. We're watching these games. We're telling you the things to pay attention for. And we try to give you a little different perspective than what you typically see out of the main broadcast outlets, the Indy Stars and the commentary from the national writers, the Jeff Goodmans, Jeff Borzels of the world. We love all of them. This is in conjunction to what they all do here at Indiana HQ. Matt, let's wrap up talking about a couple of additional storylines. If you ask me, Indiana's Big Ten tournament overall was actually a success. And I know it's frustrating to see IU lose to Penn State on Saturday, but when Tamar Bates fell on his back during that game, I cringed and I said, oh my God, is this another guard that Indiana isn't going to have? IU is going into this tournament with 7 rotation pieces that in general look like they're healthy. Do you think, by the way, Kent State, they do have an injury concerns. Gianni Santiago has not played for them since February. He's a rotation piece. He averages 7 points a game. He's doubtful for the first weekend. Indiana may actually catch an injury break between now and this first matchup against the Golden Flashes. Do you agree that the Big Ten tournament overall successful run, even though Indiana didn't come home with any hardware? I thought, this team got out healthy. We saw more out of Bates and Renew. I might be crazy, but I was curious to hear what you have to say.
No, the only way this Big Ten tournament was going to be successful if IU won it, because they went out and said on senior. No, because they went out on senior night and proclaimed that they wanted to go and win it and come back and win it. If they hadn't said that,
they had to say that though.
I mean, they have to say that, but Woodson was like, I want to hang another banner. Let's go. And I thought they had the draw to do it. I thought they should have beaten Penn State. I think if they play Purdue a third time, they'd probably beat Purdue. So I think they had it there and they choked it against Penn State. To be honest, actually, they didn't really choke it. Penn State kind of earned that. They played out of their mind in that game. They hit a couple backwards, upside down,
crazy threes. They made every free throw they took until the last minute. Look, let's take the winning the tournament piece out of it. If I told you on the condition Indiana did not win the tournament,
look, winning a game in a Big Ten tournament, I will never complain about, because IU was a 34% win rate in that tournament anyways. So we have to get it.
And they won by double digits against a good team.
They won about double digits against a good team, yes. But I feel like they should have come out and given they should have beat Penn State. They should have beat Penn State. Okay. I can't believe we got swept this year 2 games against Penn State. Remember, we have a chance to beat them a third time. So, it's fine.
Northwestern, Penn State, and Iowa, the teams that swept Indiana as far as multiple games over the course of the year. Tamar Bates and Malik Renew. More playing time, less playing time, or keep it the same?
More playing time. I think the way Tamar's been playing over the last 2 games, I think you ride the hot hand. And Malik Renew, I think, offers you more than what Race Thompson is currently doing. Though that could change with a couple of days of rest, and hopefully you guys, are feeling a little bit better in Albany. Again, a freshman and Tamar Bates, sophomore, stepping up in big time tournament games is less likely to happen than a senior, 2 seniors in Miller Kopp and Race Thompson to step up in those games. But if you start to see some worrying signs from the 2 of those guys early on in the game, I would ride Tamar Bates and Malik Renew into the ground that game, because you have to get past that game. You just have to. You can't lose to Kent State in the first game.
And this is the dynamic of the tournament that's different than regular season games, right? Because you have to go play Kent State Friday and then quick turnaround. Here we go. It could be a noon start. It could be a 9 p.m. start on Sunday with either Miami or Drake. And okay, if you had to get 30 minutes out of Race Thompson on Friday, maybe he's not the best option to go another 30 minutes on Sunday. Then you go, okay, maybe we lean to Renew more or Geronimo more and give them that sort of freshness aspect to it. That's something Mike Woodson's got to think about. I agree. I've seen enough out of Tamar Bates and Malik Renew over the last 2 to 3 games where I want Bates to get to shave a few minutes off of Trey Galloway's playing time, and I want Malik Renew to shave a few minutes off of Race Thompson's playing time. I've seen enough. I think Bates and Renew are doing better defensively than they've done really at any point this season, especially when you adjust for competition. I like the shooting form that Tamar Bates is bringing in. Does he take a couple crazy shots here and there? Absolutely. But I want guys to eliminate the hesitation. Indiana can afford to be a little bit more reckless with their shot
I don't
selection.
want them to play like Archie Miller is the coach ever again. Okay. You take the shots that are given to you. You do not take shots that, or don't feel like you don't want to take a shot because you don't want to miss it. I want you to take the shots that are given to you. I don't care if it's ends up being a bad shot because you make a bad decision. I want you to take the shots. Now, some people tomorrow have a bit of a tendency to do that more often than not, which is what I was saying, which was take a bad shot or take a shot that you think is good but end up being a bad shot. But I live with those mistakes if he makes them, right? And he did that against Penn State, and that's why you wrote him out at the end there. And he did that against Maryland. That's why you played him against Maryland. And if he continues to do that, then that's fine. That becomes a dynamic, right? The more he takes bad shots and makes them, the more often they're going to go in, actually, because he's going to have confidence and he's going to have the experience of making tough contested shots. So you kind of have to live with the bad shots as they're happening. And, you know, he's a sophomore / freshman, depending on where you look and what you consider, you know, what year you consider him. But I like what I've seen from tomorrow over the most recent games.
Me too. And I want to see more of it. I want Indiana to be a little bit more crazy in their shot selection. Take the threes when they're there, even if they're half contested. That's the way this team can unlock a few more points of potential out of their ceiling.
This game, though, it's going to have to be more time for, I think, less time for Miller Kopp, more time for Trey Galloway. I know you said you want to see him take time away from Trey Galloway, and I agree when we're playing bigger teams. But as a team, I think Penn State plays 4 guards, 3 guards mostly, and then they'll rotate a 4th guard in at that 4 spot or like a bigger guard. I would like to see tomorrow, again, for defensive purposes, play the 3.
I like what I'm hearing. Yeah, Tamar Bates has done a lot of good things defensively. We know how good of a defender Trey Galloway is. Mike Woodson may experiment a little bit with playing small in this game, right? Penn State doesn't have too many bigs on the court, and that'll be an interesting wrinkle to this game as well. Yep. So we've told you our thoughts as far as this Penn State game. We have Indiana winning. Matt has it by a couple points. I have it by 7. Ken Pond's got it by 4. The sports books have it by 4.5. So that's pretty much about what you can expect. All I know is if Kent State wins this game, it would not be all that surprising to me, given the way they've played this year. Quickly looking ahead to Sunday, Matt, Miami, Drake. I'm not going to ask you to dive into detail. We'll probably have a podcast episode on Saturday talking about Indiana's game against Kent State, positive or negative. And so looking ahead to Miami, Drake, just high-level thoughts. Miami, obviously, out of the ACC. They lost to Duke in the ACC tournament. Drake won a Missouri Valley tournament over a week ago. They clinched their auto bid to the NCAA tournament last Sunday, so they're going to have about a week and a half of rest before their Friday tip against Miami. Who do you think wins that game? Miami's got a couple of banged up players, Norchad O'Meara and Nigel Pack coming out of the ACC tournament. Do you think Miami or Drake pulls this off? And what's something that Indiana fans need to know about either of these teams?
Okay, Drake pulls this off, and the reason why they do so is they have some of the most fun players in the tournament, including Tucker DeVries.
Yeah,
Tucker DeVries is awesome. I love Tucker DeVries. I think he's so fun to watch. Other players on the roster you need to know. Roman Penn is another. He's a guard that averages about 12.6. Tucker DeVries is also a guard, but he's 6'7". So he's not really a guard. He's more of like a wing.
Combo
averages about 38% from 3. He does everything. I think he's going to be an NBA player at some point in his career, if not this year. They're a great free throw shooting team. They have 5 people on their roster that shoot above 80% from the free throw line. They are undersized though. They play 2 forwards. They play 2 forwards. And Darnell Brody is their 1 forward that plays the most at 6'10", but he's not really super dominant. But this is a perfect matchup for Miami because I think they can take advantage of a lot of Miami's weaknesses. Whereas when they play Indiana, the only thing I'm worried about is Tucker DeVries going for about 40. If we can keep Tucker DeVries under control and let the rest of the team try to beat you, this is a team that will struggle significantly against IU's size and rim protection with Trace Jackson Davis. So I kind of like the IU matchup against Drake, and I think Drake will end up winning that game.
Yeah, Drake right now is a 2.5 point underdog in their game against Miami. So
which is basically a toss-up.
Odds makers are expecting that one. to come down to the wire. They're a shrewd basketball team, coached well. They play well. Miami also coached well. Jim Larinaga, excellent as far as his NCAA tournament record is concerned. It's just they're a little banged up.
He's been there, done that.
He's been there, done that. They're just a little banged up, and I'm curious how, what kind of legs they have after their Friday game going into the Sunday matchup against, as we're all hoping, Indiana. Miami is a team coming out of a very weak ACC this year. Maryland beat them, I believe, on a neutral in the non-conference. So just a couple of different things to keep an eye out for here going into this Miami-Drake matchup. We'll have a lot more on this game Saturday if Indiana does take care of business on Friday against the Kent State Golden Flashes. So, Matt, we digested a lot here, talked about a lot here on the Sunday night. This is the best time of the year, if you ask me, between college basketball and everything else going on right now. What are your final thoughts? You could talk about Rutgers snubbed out of the field. You can talk about any other of these teams that you think will make a run. The floor is really wide open for you here as we close up shop on this Sunday night.
I have yet to see in my young life a bottom half of the tournament that is stronger than this year. I think the 12 seeds are absolute tornadoes. Category 5
I haven't gone through it yet. I might have every 12 seed winning.
Every 12 seed, outside of, I'm trying to think for me, outside of one, I think I have winning. So I have 3 out of the 4 winning. I have 2 13s winning. I have a 14 winning and I have a 15 winning a game in my first bracket. And that's just the one bracket I have. I have UC Santa Barbara beating Baylor as a 14 seed. I'm pretty sure I have I have Vermont beating Marquette as a 15 seed.
Yeah.
The 15 seeds are tough. I mean, heck, I think Howard is underrated. I think they're a team that I think on a normal year would be a 15 or a 14. That's a 16 this year. That doesn't mean they're going to I don't expect them to lose that game.
Right.
All right. I don't expect Howard to win that game, but still, like, holy, again, this is just a strange year where teams at the lower half and in the mid-majors, lower half of Division I basketball are so strong, so unbelievably strong. Kent State is in that as well. So if you're making your brackets, don't go chalk. This year will not go chalk.
Yeah.
I mean, most years it doesn't go chalk, or not even remotely close to chalk. But this year I would be surprised if more than 2 5 seeds make it out of that game alive. So again, yeah, I mean, it goes in line with me saying Drake's going to beat Miami, right? I think Drake beats Miami.
Yeah.
I think Charleston beats whichever team they're supposed to play in that first game. I think Oral Roberts actually makes the Final Four as a 12 seed. That's a spoiler for my region. So yeah, a lot of good 12 seeds. Holy.
It's incredible, and I completely agree with your point as far as these bottom teams really bringing the heat. Really from the 9s to the 16s, it's going to be an absolute grind for all the teams in the top half of the field. But along those lines, credit to Indiana. I know people are going to be like, oh, you're making excuses, you dumbass. The fact of the matter is, like, Indiana fighting through all this and getting a 4 seed, like even instead of a 5 seed, is a pretty significant accomplishment, because as we were looking at the different possibilities tonight, you're saying, shoot, like, you don't want any piece of Oral Roberts, you don't want any piece of Charleston, you don't want any piece of Drake, you don't want any piece of VCU. Kent State's not a terrible team by any means, but like those teams at the 12 line are a real thorn. And Indiana had a nightmare stretch of basketball in the middle of their season, and they picked themselves up by the bootstraps, not just to get back to the sea level. They exceeded, right? They went above and beyond. They didn't just settle for making the tournament as a bubble team, which Rutgers earlier tonight found out that they weren't good enough. Indiana got back to not just bubble level, but double bye level in the Big Ten and 4 seed level of the NCAA tournament. That's a pretty freaking awesome accomplishment for this team. And this Friday night game against Kent State is going to be a real slugfest. It's coming down to the last minute. I don't think Indiana's going to blow them out, and I don't think Penn State's going to blow Indiana out. But this team, to get into this position, they're 4 seed, and you feel kind of good about them in the Sunday matchup, and you feel kind of good about them if they go in and go to Kansas City for the Sweet 16. Like, to get back to this level without having Xavier Johnson, by playing a tough Big Ten schedule, by getting, scarred a little bit in those games against Arizona and Kansas, to me, that's the tip of the cap. And now the fun starts. You've gotten into the field, which was a grind, which was a mountain that was very hard to climb during the Archie Miller era. You're in the field. You're a 4 seed. Way to go, Indiana basketball. Now let's look forward to seeing this team and the IU women's team do some major damage here in March Madness.
Facts.
Can't wait to see that all play out. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 289th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You are all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you all next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.